The story begins with Jake Sanders driving his truck through the arid desert landscape of the American Southwest. The sun blazes overhead, casting long shadows across the desolate terrain. Jake is on a delivery run to a remote town, one of the few left in a dying corner of the desert. The road is long and empty, stretching endlessly through the barren land, with no other vehicles in sight. As Jake drives, he notices a dirt road branching off from the main highway, leading into the heart of the desert. His curiosity is piqued when he spots an old weathered sign half buried in the sand that reads, "Deadwood Gulch, 5 miles." The name stirs something in him, a vague memory of stories about abandoned ghost towns from the Old West. With plenty of time before his delivery, Jake decides to take a detour and explore. He turns onto the dirt road, the tires of his rig kicking up clouds of dust as he heads deeper into the desert. The road is rough and uneven, leading him through a landscape of rocky outcroppings and dry creek beds. The sense of isolation grows as the miles pass, the world outside his truck becoming increasingly silent and still. Finally, Jake crests a small rise and sees the town of Deadwood Gulch sprawled out before him. The sight is both eerie and fascinating. A collection of old, weather-beaten buildings standing alone in the middle of the desert, seemingly untouched by time. The wooden structures lean with age, their paint faded and peeling, windows broken or boarded up. A rusty, wind-blown sign creaks on its hinges, welcoming visitors to a place long forgotten. Jake parks his truck at the edge of town and steps out, the hot desert wind tugging at his clothes. The air is dry and thick with the smell of dust and old wood. As he walks into the town, the silence is almost deafening, broken only by the occasional gust of wind that whistles through the empty streets. As Jake explores the deserted town, he feels a strange sense of being watched, though there's no one around. The buildings are relics of a bygone era, a saloon, a general store, a sheriff's office, all frozen in time. He steps inside the saloon, the wooden floorboards creaking under his weight. The bar is still stocked with dusty bottles, and old playing cards are scattered across a table, as if the patrons had simply vanished in the middle of a game. The atmosphere inside the saloon is thick with an uneasy energy, and Jake begins to hear faint, indistinct sounds, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of voices, and the faint strains of a piano playing an old tune. The sounds are distant, like echoes from another time, but they grow louder the longer he stays. Jake's curiosity drives him to explore further. He moves through the town, finding more signs of life abruptly halted. Tools left in mid-use at the blacksmith's, clothes hanging on a line in the dusty breeze. The feeling of being watched intensifies, and Jake begins to notice shadows moving at the edges of his vision, figures that vanish when he tries to focus on them. As the day wears on and the sun begins to dip towards the horizon, the atmosphere in Deadwood Gulch becomes more oppressive. The air grows cooler, and the shadows lengthen, creeping across the town like dark fingers. The sounds from the past grow louder and more distinct, and Jake starts to hear footsteps echoing behind him, following him as he moves through the streets. He tries to leave the town, but the path back to his truck seems to shift and change, leading him in circles. No matter which direction he turns, he finds himself back at the heart of the town, in front of the saloon, as if the town itself is trying to trap him. The once distant echoes of the past are now all around him. The laughter of men, the clatter of horses' hooves, and the harsh cries of an angry mob. Jake's unease turns to fear as he realizes that he's not alone. The figures he's glimpsed in the corners of his vision start to take shape, ghostly apparitions of townsfolk dressed in old, tattered clothes, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. They move silently, their expressions a mixture of sadness and anger, as they relive the final moments of their lives in an endless loop. As night falls, the town of Deadwood Gulch comes alive with the spirits of its past. The ghostly figures move through the streets, reenacting scenes from a time long forgotten. Jake watches in horror as a spectral shootout unfolds in the main street, the gunfire echoing through the night, but the sounds are muffled as if coming from underwater. The air grows colder, and the spirits begin to take notice of Jake's presence. Their hollow eyes turn towards him, their expressions growing more menacing. They start to converge on him, their movements slow but purposeful, as if he's an intruder in their world. Jake's heart pounds as he tries to back away, but his feet feel rooted to the spot. In a panic, Jake runs to his truck, only to find it surrounded by more spirits, their ghostly forms flickering in and out of existence. The truck, once a symbol of his freedom and mobility, now seems like a trap. The spirits press closer, their faces twisted with anger and despair, as if blaming him for disturbing their rest. Desperate to escape, Jake makes a break for the only place that seems untouched by the ghostly presence, the church at the edge of town. The wooden building stands tall and imposing, its steeple silhouetted against the night sky. He pushes through the heavy doors and stumbles inside, slamming them shut behind him. Inside the church, the air is thick with the scent of old wood and dust. The pews are empty, and the altar is draped in cobwebs. The oppressive atmosphere is somewhat lighter here, and Jake takes a moment to catch his breath. But the respite is short-lived. The ghostly figures begin to appear inside the church, filling the pews and blocking the exits. Jake realizes that the spirits are tied to the town, bound by a tragic past that keeps them trapped in a cycle of torment. They're not just haunting Deadwood Gulch, they're reliving the events that led to their demise, unable to move on. And now, they've taken an interest in him, seeing him as a part of their endless, cursed existence. In a desperate attempt to escape, Jake approaches the altar, hoping to find some way to break the curse. He notices an old, weathered book lying on the pulpit, its pages yellowed and brittle. The book seems to hum with a strange energy, and as Jake opens it, he finds it filled with accounts of the town's history, detailing the violent and tragic events that led to its downfall. Realizing that the spirits are trapped by the unresolved guilt and anger of their past lives, Jake begins to read aloud from the book, recounting the events that bound them to the town. As he reads, the spirits in the church grow restless, their forms flickering and fading. The air in the room becomes charged with energy, and the walls seem to tremble as the spirit's hold on the town weakens. Jake's voice grows louder and more confident as he reads the final passages, detailing the tragic fate of the town's inhabitants. The spirits wail in anguish as they relive their final moments, their forms becoming more transparent with each word. The oppressive weight in the air begins to lift, and the room is filled with a bright, blinding light. As Jake finishes the last passage, the spirits let out a collective sigh, and the light engulfs the entire church. When the light fades, the ghosts are gone, and the town is silent once more. The air is still, and the night sky outside is clear, with the stars shining brightly above. Jake steps out of the church feeling a sense of calm and relief. The town of Deadwood Gulch is still abandoned and eerie, but the malevolent presence is gone. He walks back to his truck, finding it exactly where he left it, untouched and ready to go. As he drives away from Deadwood Gulch, the desert stretches out before him, vast and empty. The sense of unease that had plagued him is gone, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude for having escaped the town's curse. The sun begins to rise, casting a golden light over the landscape, and Jake feels a renewed appreciation for the life he has. The story ends with Jake glancing in his rearview mirror, seeing the ghost town receding into the distance. It's just a dot on the horizon now, a forgotten place that will remain in his memory forever. As he turns his eyes back to the road ahead, he knows he'll never forget the experience, but he's glad to be back on the open road, free from the haunting echoes of the past.